I have lots of samples of agendas that I work with, and we can pick something that we like and whatever works for us. I mean,
that would be wonderful.
yeah, there's nothing set in stone about how an agenda is, the organization and the flow piece. But when I was looking at our current agenda, it seems tedious somehow. So, and I know in the bylaws it specifies it. This time, okay, well, that doesn't even need to be in the bylaws. Let's take it out. So you notice I left it out.
And that's short. That's been under discussion. So.
Well, I did. You're going to be getting Sharon and I did working what I call working.
So do you have the meeting?
So it's down
Well,
and look up
I wanted to come here, Dawn, because I've spent 10 hours a day on it.
Oh, okay.
I have to stay in front of the computer. I work for the California Department of Administration.
Oh,
Sacramento. So.
okay. So you've been sitting.
I haven't
Do
sitting.
you have a standing?
That's you on
and all that. You know, comes over the, you know, they're. It's all.
It says it's muted,
Thing. So you're kind of tight and they're talking at you. And I'm used to having a separate phone.
saying it doesn't have
2 monitors, a keyboard, a mouse, everything. Now I just don't allow.
a speaker. It should.
I know it's got speakers. We did it on this last
And it's
time.
about the same
It's
size as that.
test your microphone works.
And I'm very thankful for it. It's just that it's what you're used to.
Do you want to do it on that computer?
I think we might have to. Yeah, it's
Okay.
My middle son is taking his midterms.
Yeah, from where?
He's a graduate student at Sac State.
Okay.
And so he's taking his midterms tonight. My daughter's doing online classes. And so we got, and then my son's working, he teaches third grade, and he does online videos and classes.
What did you teach?
Rockford.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So
So they're all in the house right now. And then today, my wife is doing, because of this thing, she works for UC there. She has a committee she does. And so they were doing that virtual committee.
Oh, yeah.
So I was hiding in the bedroom. She was in the living room. Each one of the children were in the bedrooms. Wow. Yeah, so,
Well, you know, it's interesting. People at the very end of Kenneth down there, Suddenlinks had a contractor set up to put in all the underground lines. Apparently, there was a mutiny on the far end of Kenneth over the internet service.
Suddenly?
It was Suddenlink, and it's been out, I guess, according. I've gotten bits and pieces from it. The contractor called us on Friday because he wanted to start first thing Monday to start. Because Suddenlink's really putting the screws to him.
Or is there a number we can call? We can use my.
Because I had AT&T, I had DSL, and it was going out all the time, even though there was a DSL box.
Right.
And I finally said, I can't do this. I work from home a lot.
Right.
I have to be on. I need this, you know. And so I called Suddenlink and I said, you're the only game in town. I don't like you, but I'm gonna go in. And they said, well, we can put your TV in. I said, well, yeah, just, and since they've been in, I haven't.
Oh, great.
Get a call or anything. But it's because they upgraded all their lines coming to me, and I'm on the outside.
I'm Nancy.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that section is taken care of. But I'm not on Kenneth because I forgot it.
Oh,
I live
yeah.
on the other end of Kenneth.
Yeah, you're on the opposite.
I'm on the third on the other end. Thankfully,
That is all working. Well, you're putting a heavy load on it with all this.
Type key followed by pound. Otherwise, just press pound to continue.
Especially when we do the video
Please
streaming.
record your name. When you have
Watch
finished
it.
recording, press pound. You are in the meeting now. There are 12 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. You have been put on hold by the host. You cannot listen or talk until the host releases the hold.
What are we doing now? So, this will.
Okay. I'm gonna hang up.
We're a small family. We have Dixie. Dixie is a little pool. And so it's good as it gets.
They don't share, right?
They don't check, that's why we have Dixie. Because they don't check, because my husband does not like shitty dogs. I love the bigger dogs, but I love all of them, so. It's like,
Where we live, back where the old school, where the school was within there.
I think we might have to allow you to.
so,
Okay.
did you buy the original, the dry creek school, the Christian Public School?
So I'm gonna leave, meeting.
So.
Okay. Okay.
You have to unmute everybody.
Sure.
Can folks hear us?
Yeah.
Good evening. Can folks hear us?
Hi.
Good evening, it's Rolando. Can you guys hear us?
Stay home with the Whopper. Oh, I see.
I can hear you.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, sorry about that. We had some issues getting on the Zoom and then being able to hear. So I think we rebooted and I think that was resolved. And the recording configuration is set up, so. Okay. 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 Good evening, everybody. Sorry about that. We had some delays because of audio, but I think we're all set and ready to get going. We actually have two computers going, so you might see the front of me and the side of me, I guess. So we'll get started real quick. We're gonna introduce everybody here in the room. I have myself, Rolando Delatorre. I'm the acting board president. And then we have, I'll let folks introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Dan Egas. Sherry White.
John Elias, general manager.
And then Lynn, can you hear us? I'm not sure that Lynn is on. He's connected, but I don't think he's on.
It should show.
He's not muted, but I think he might have walked away while we were setting that potentially.
You may have started driving here.
And left his computer on. Okay. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and have everybody introduce themselves from the board. Or I guess I'll just read the name off because I see who's on the Zoom, and maybe you could just say hello. So I think first off we have Bonnie.
Hi there.
Bonnie.
Bonnie.
And then second we have Joanne.
Hi.
Hey, Joanne.
And then the third person I see is Marilyn.
Merlene.
Marlene.
Hello.
Okay. Then we got Heidi.
Yep, I'm here.
And then we have someone on the phone with the 310 area code.
I believe that's Edgar Science. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Edgar. Oh, CSD. Okay, Edgar. Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah.
If you're just a community member, just say community member. If otherwise, please. So, Edgar, tell us again who you're with.
I'm with a company called C.S.D. Industries.
Okay. Right. Okay. Then there's a C. Berg. They're muted. They're muted right now.
That's Cindy Bergman.
Thank you, Cindy.
And she's having trouble seeing you guys and hearing for some reason. So I'm on the phone with her. This is Heidi. I'm on the phone with her.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to help her get on there.
Okay, I can unmute her. That might, I think I can unmute her. Yeah, so you're unmuted, Seabird, Cindy. So I don't know if you can speak, but then we have Diane.
Hello, everybody.
And then Greg.
Hello.
Then we have Ryan.
Yes, hi, Ryan Schlick. I'm also with C.S.D. Industries in conjunction with Edgar to listen in and then possibly support in providing some outside solutions that might be of value engineering as well as cost savings back to the district.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Let me see here. Lynn, are you back on?
He's working on that.
He's working on the audio. Okay. Okay. Tiffany? Okay, I don't know if Tiffany can hear us or if she's on. Did I miss anybody who has an audio connection? Okay, we'll go ahead and get started with the agenda. So next on the agenda, we have some correspondence that we want to acknowledge from Diane. Diane, you sent a letter to the board. So I'm going to go over the topics that you brought up real quick. I don't think that we're going to be able to address them all. I'm going to have to review them again, bring them up for the next agenda, or possibly determine if we need to assign a committee to each of these. So I basically just want to acknowledge them today, and I'll get started on that. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, topic one, open up a dialogue for the independent engineer to submit an estimate for the potential retrofitting of a reservoir, essentially covering it in an in-ground tank with C.S.D. Optidome. Diane proposed this as an agenda item. Unfortunately, it wasn't done early enough. We expect that the agenda item to be submitted 7 days prior to the meeting. And unfortunately, that wasn't done, so we didn't get an opportunity to really review that and take any action. But I'll give you the opportunity to.
I was under the impression that they had to be submitted at least before 72 hours, and I had them in at 96 hours.
It's 7 days.
That was not clear. Where is that stated other than just recently? Because that's the first time I saw it.
It's in our current version of the bylaws.
Well, in terms of the C.S.D. Personnel that's here, this is a high priority. So if you want to, forego a lot of the topic items until next month, other than other items that were on the agenda regarding stipends and so on and so forth. Otherwise, I would protest an elimination of giving C.S.D. the proper floor.
Well, I think we are likely to welcome C.S.D. We just probably need to do it at our next meeting. I appreciate that they logged on and that they are willing to provide us with some options, but I think ideally we'd want to vet those out and have the opportunity to discuss it with them prior to having them on the agenda. Did you get that, Diane? Diane, you're muted.
Please give these gentlemen the floor and giving their time this evening briefly to at least address it. Thank you.
We're trying to.
You, I'm not asking you to make a decision. I'm just asking you to give them the floor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to adhere to our rules as best as we can. We're trying to do a better job of that. So at this time, like I said, we appreciate the work that you did to bring them to the group. Unfortunately, we didn't do it and have the opportunity to vet this, so we can't allow
All right,
that.
let me pose this. Are you proposing to accept the bid this evening? Is that on the agenda as the increased amount? Because this is paramount that these options are at least exposed.
Well, we are going to.
I would challenge.
We are going to discuss the options that are on the table right now. We can review those at that time. I'm still not sure that we're willing to introduce a new alternative that hasn't been properly vetted by.
Then that you're outside your fiduciary responsibility under the auspice that you're going to.
Action.
This is our money, Rolando, that you're spending. You should at least give the public the opportunity to listen to other options outside of Jerry's box. We've only had Jerry's assessments. It's only right. Okay, I yield.
There are a couple of options for the C.S.D. They can speak at the item when the item is discussed as far as the increase in cost, or if it's not specific to that item, they can speak from for items that are not on the agenda and give a little bit about themselves and what they offer and ask for consideration before a decision is made during that time. So there are two options for them at this point in time, whichever one best meets their needs. But again, for the item itself, they can speak to what they would provide in consideration before a decision is made, or they can speak to items not on the agenda and tell a little bit about who they are and why they're attending the meeting. Either way.
I respectfully submit to you that the reason I didn't come forward sooner with this information is I was not made privy to the fact that we were even further over budget from the last meeting until I actually got on that the very next day. So I appreciate it, Kathleen, if you would give them the floor as you stated. Thank you.
I understand. We just need to have them make their comments during the appropriate. So they can determine which one is going to be the appropriate time, whether it's items or whether it's when we discuss that particular agenda item. If they can make it work for them, either way. And then the board will have the decision to either not make a decision and wait until more information is coming forward and make a decision based on the comments that they make.
Hopefully we'll.
Okay. So moving on to the second topic in Diane's letter, this has to do with reopening the discussion of the income survey. I believe we have that on the agenda, so we'll discuss that in the agenda. We have an update, right, from the financial assistance. Actually, we don't have that on the agenda. So there again, we'll have to leave that for the next meeting. The third item is a committee formation on authorization writing to allow Diane a formal address of the cooperative. I think this is for the CAL FIRE. That is on the agenda, correct? Yeah, fire station in Christian Valley, item number 9 under administrative reports. We'll speak about that there. Public notice to all avail on the.
Got it.
Got it. Okay, we hear you, Lynn. I think we can talk about that when we review the newsletter. It's already been incorporated in the newsletter. That was topic number 4.
The tidal wave.
Topic number 5.
No picture.
The board of directors is on notice that we're in violation of the California water codes. I think it's with regard to stipend. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the bylaws. And the next item, topic number 6, has to do with is unlawful for the district cannot,
Okay, that's you.
for California code, lawfully, the district cannot exceed 50% of the total asset property value. This must be known as to what the value will fall after the economic downturn. So this topic is new. We haven't had a chance to review it, so we aren't able to speak to it. So we'll put that, or review it and decide whether it's going to be on the next agenda or needs action by committee. Topic number 7.
Now you should ask them if they can hear you. Can they hear you?
I don't know.
Yes, then we can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
We're in business.
Topic number 7, I think it's now mute, as you have called out here. There was a concern about not the proper number of board members at the meeting to vote on proceeding with the project. I think that's still up for discussion now, so I don't know that we need to discuss that one. And that was it. So there were 7 topics. We acknowledge receiving them, and we'll have them addressed for the next meeting, or try to address them where applicable in the agenda today. Okay, so next on the agenda is a water report. Jerry, you wanna?
Okay. Everything's fine. The plant went well. We had a really tough leak. Virginia last month. It was, we knew.
I'm sorry, can we up his audio, because I can barely hear him?
Okay. So the plant went well. No issues to report at the water plant, other than minor maintenance type issues. The big item of the month was a leak out on Virginia and Kenneth there on County Road. It got called in. We went out. We had suspected that there was a leak in that area for over 6 months, because there was some water in it. Couldn't figure out where it was. Well, it started pouring out on the side of the road. So we went out. It took 4.5 days, took 3 days to find it. And it turns out it was just a service line leak, big one. But when they put the sewer line in, they put it right under the services, and the services was sitting up on top of it, which is a no-no, right? You're supposed to have a 1 foot separation at a minimum. You're supposed to case it. The first service that we found where the water was coming out, it was cased, but it was still really close, which, you know, that kind of meets the mark. The problem that we had was the county backfilled that whole thing with pea gravel. So we had water, there was water everywhere with chlorine in it, and trying to find it was just a nightmare. So we ended up finding it. It was on the second service. We repaired it. It wasn't sleeved. It was similar to one that we fixed a number of years ago up on Northgate, right there, Northgate and Stanley. We had one there. I mean, if it becomes continues to be an issue, I don't know what our recourse is with the county. You know, who was out there when it got installed, who designed it, because our water services were there first, and then they put that sewer line in. So, you know, if it's like that everywhere, these things keep having issues, it's going to become a big problem. I don't know that it will. I don't know that they're all like that. This was the second one that we found. So it was a big deal, but an easy fix once we were able to find it. So, but it did mitigate the issue with the separation of the sewer. Whitley, I was running a little bit late. I was going to go down there. Have they figured out CCC?
Yeah, the next couple of days they're going to seal.
Okay, good. They're going to seal their tanks. Okay, so as soon as that's done in that area, the hillside dries out, we'll go out and try to figure out again. When the leaks are big, they're easy.
Right.
When they're not, they can be a real trick to find. But once that area is dry, we'll go back out and see if we can figure out what's going on. Then there was just some miscellaneous call-outs and whatnot. In terms of last month, we talked about the generator. So when Cummins came up and programmed the automatic transfer switch, he did identify a number of issues that, I mean, were important. You know, the membrane was one of them. It's a push button on the transfer switch that didn't get water in it. That's old, it's sun-baked. There was a number of others. The block heater, the battery charger, I talked like, oh yeah, no problem, I'll put it in. And I don't think I'm going to mess with it. a little bit, it seems easy, but I don't want to mess with it. It's $200 in their estimate. It's $100 plus for the part. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good deal having the expert do that. In Dawn's email, you had sent out their proposal to everybody. I just brought one copy, but the punchline is it's about $2,000 plus sales tax. Right? It's $2,100 when they say sales tax not included. That takes care of all the deficiencies: the battery charger, the block heater, the run relay, the membrane, and then there's a security switch that really needs to go on there. And I can't believe they don't sell them that way, but somebody could go up and start pushing buttons. If they kind of knew what they were doing, they could do some bad stuff. But this key goes in and it blacks it out so no one else can see it. No one can get into the panel, but somebody theoretically could go up and start punching on it. And so the security key will lock them out. So that's like a no-brainer. We got to do that. The service, the annual service, and this is for 3 years. They gave us a quote. It's basically about $980 to come out. I was asked, hey, what does that include? They're a good company. I mean, they were very thorough. It's all the filters. It's checking changing all the fluids, doing all that, and then doing what's called a load test, which is $400. But in this particular application, we have a huge generator with hardly any load on it, right? So it never really gets to work. And they put this like a load, it's like a big toaster, and they start cranking it up and loading it down, and it burns out all the carbon in it from the testing and all that. So to me, it sounds like a really good deal. The $1,500 a year for service, and then roughly $2,100 was on there to do to take care of that punch list of things. So I saw you sent them a line of the credit app, just
Right.
in case they won't even talk to us until they finish that. So anyway, the total for 3 years is $6,347. You just pay for what you use, right? So the first year, it's basically $3,400. There's some tax for the material. Of that, $2,100 is the punch list items, and then roughly $1,500, give or take $1,400 is for the service. And it was not serviced by, only the one at the plant was serviced by that Auburn company. But, we'll see how these guys go. I mean, they're on top of it. I'd almost rather, once we get a relationship with them, talk to them about servicing the general for the Detroit unit as well. So, but we can deal with that later. So anyway, that's
so the decision is to go ahead or not to go ahead.
Right, the proposal.
So is everybody clear on what the proposal is? I don't know if you need more information. So a little bit of history was we were able to get a generator that was in very good shape from the state. So it would have cost us how many different?
Oh, so it's a $75,000.
Yeah, generator. So we had this great opportunity. We tried to leverage it and save a lot of money. However, in order to install it and to ensure that it's working well, it cost us some money. We had some problems, so we couldn't get it. We had to hire a company to come in and make sure it was working. It's working now, but there's still some items that need to be maintained on the device.
So this is a company that's going to maintain that?
Yes.
Okay. And have we had it is?
No, we had a company from Auburn come on, North Electric. They did the installation.
Okay.
And they're a great electrician. They really came through. They got it running for us, but it wouldn't operate properly. And so I called the local Cummings rep, which is out in Sacramento, and they came up, hooked his computer up, and knew exactly what to do. It was night and day. Nothing against Norris, but they couldn't figure it out, and they didn't identify like the block heater issue and the
So these are specialists.
They are absolute specialists. I didn't get. If you sign up for their annual preventive maintenance, you do get a discount. I didn't ask them what that was.
So and this contract is around. Okay. And the cost stays the same for each year, or does it increase?
It's pretty much, it goes up, there's $16, $17, and then the next year it goes up $50 on the third year. So it goes up.
Kathleen, I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry, I don't have.
Having a very, very difficult.
So I will work on it. I was asking Gary some questions about the costs related to this project or to the this piece to keep the generator running. and to ensure that we always have that work. And so I was asking about a multi-year contract. I was also asking about a reduction in price because of a multi-year contract. And were we getting any other discounts and the credibility of the company? So those were the questions that I had. And because I'm not familiar with that company, I am familiar with Elias Electric and I'm working on other kind of projects, but that is not their specialty area. So I got my questions answered at this point, I think. Yeah. Is that summarize it?
That's perfect.
Okay. So sorry, Diane, I will try to speak louder.
Okay.
So apparently Lynn must have driven up and just showed up, so.
Hey, I saw your face on the screen.
I could hear you talking. My audio. It sounded like you were in the barrel. And I couldn't understand a word you were saying, but I could tell it was you.
So Lynn, real quick, so Don, give an update on some of the work that we did this month, and also the proposal. I don't know if you reviewed the Cummings proposal. I don't know if you have any questions on that, but we need to decide whether we want to.
Still on water?
Yes.
When Jerry and I have talked, and so I.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about the reservoir, or I'm sorry, not the generator set over there, that service that we talked about last month, getting on preventive maintenance. The other thing, and again, I don't know how, we get a priority if we're a long-term client. So if something goes wrong, you're kind of on a priority list of having them come help, and it's particularly important, obviously, the pump station. And the tech that was out, absolutely knew this stuff. It was amazing I learned a lot from him.
So the only other question that I would have is, do we have any data from other companies that they've served or any recommendations?
I didn't call any references. I didn't do that. Do you know what the cost of Detroit was? Did you get the bill for Norris for the water plant? Just to give a kind of a rough cost, at least a cost comparison between the two.
Well, the first portion, the first part of that bill is basically to do the work that needs to be done, right?
$2,100.
Yeah, it's mandatory.
Right, and it's pretty itemized. I didn't see that anything too expensive for what it said. I think we need to move forward with that. I think the bigger question is, do we want to enter into an annual contract? And we had discussed it the last month meeting that there's reasons to do that.
So I would like to make a motion that we actually enter into a 3-year contract, get the priority areas taken care of, and enter into a 3-year contract at this time, pending a review of credit of their capabilities or a background check to make sure that everything is okay. I suspect it is, but I think it's always valuable to do that. So I would like to move that we enter into a multi-year contract with this company to get our stuff taken care of and also to get the reduced rate on maintenance and a priority for getting service taken care of. Pending that, call our references.
Okay. So I can call them. I'll just get a list of them.
We need a second.
Give you a second.
Okay, that's the first motion. Second. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all ayes. We'll do that pending the review.
Yeah, and so Jerry, you're gonna.
I'll call. I mean, the generator works right now, and we're not freezing temperatures and stuff like that. Watch either. So I will bring back next month just kind of a list of some of the clients and with this simple.
Can you just review that with me?
Yeah, I think, we just do our due diligence, and then unless you find something negative, then we
There's
don't.
something stand out, assuming that everything is going to be positive, and we'll ensure to that agreement.
Okay.
Because you never know when something's going to die.
Right.
If it dies, we're in trouble because we don't have no power, no water.
Right.
So,
And you're going to have a backup plan.
Oh, well.
We have a survey.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
A survey contract.
Oh, okay. I didn't put that on my agenda.
Okay. Well, it's in there. Oh, okay.
It's on your agenda. I didn't have it on my water list.
Oh,
Sorry.
I didn't know that the board, we got the It's $900 to do the boundaries.
Marking, to mark $900 extra.
Extra.
Right, it was 1,200 plus, was it 12 plus 900?
Oh, it says in the deposit.
Yeah, that was their deposit, yeah.
Yeah, 1,200 plus.
Yeah.
From a surveyor?
Do you remember this discussion? Yes. So basically, we had 2 meetings ago, I think, recommended that maybe we should get this work done and mark our boundaries. I think everybody was in favor of that pending a quote. So we received the quote. Any questions from anybody?
And there was an amended quote where he does the corners, but no record survey. And I asked him, I said, what's the benefit of record survey? He said, there's none for us, for what we're trying to do. But he'll physically mark all the corners and boundaries.
Are they permanent markers as opposed to the stakes and ribbons on?
They're gonna, I'm sure they're gonna be posts. They're not gonna be like an action line, okay, brass line. Okay. So,
They will not be.
not the ones, not the fancy.
Okay. So any other questions?
$1,900.
Yeah. Does anybody want to make a motion?
To enter into an agreement with that surveyor. So moved.
So who, you know what?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I don't see an option of not putting the corners in. If you start construction, you need to know where your boundaries are. So.
Okay, so you're.
On favor? In favor? Aye.
I hate to keep bringing it up, you guys, but the audio is really low on a lot of the conversation. So it's very hard to track it. If you could improve it, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Chris is being. Yeah. I apologize for that. We're kind of limited in learning as we go. We had a device last month when we were at Chris's house because Chris had it. Don is going to look at investing in one for the board.
Okay, so in the miscellaneous, we got that new meter in, big 1 inch up there in Florence, so they're all set. We did finish the backflow. Yes, there's a number that failed, and I got to write them a letter. So I'll have that for the next meeting. So the backflow preventers are, everybody puts them in now, and the idea is that it prevents backwards flow from a person's home. So if they had a swimming pool with a hose thrown into it or whatnot. So the way it works is the first time it gets tested, it gets put in and verified. So there's 2 little check valves and there's a special piece of equipment that you test it with. And then after that, unless they have like a well, a swimming pool, an alternative like raw water, stuff like that, they never get tested again. It's just that they're listed and they're there. The ones that do have pools, that do have an auxiliary water supply, those get tested every year. So the ones that we test every year are the ones that are on the list with this unapproved water supply or a hazard. And I think there's 3 or 4 that I have to generate a little letter because it's their backflows. So the district, we have guys that are certified, so they just go out and do it for like 1/3 of the price of what someone else would charge them. And then there's no paperwork headache, right? So I just have to write a letter. They need to get somebody out there to replace that unit. We try to fix them to the degree the homeowner, it's the homeowner's device. Okay.
How many are there total? Like,
there's 3 or 4 that failed. I think there's like 60 of them. Yeah, I don't do the testing. I just have a big binder on my desk. There's quite a few. Okay, so the headworks is all completed, built out. The turbidimeter is in, and so we have to monitor the quality of the water leaving the plant. Hawk discontinued support of the unit that we've been using. Luckily, last year's budget meeting, we budgeted to put a new one in. It just happened to work out. So we put the brand new one in. It actually, I questioned it. Calvert, it reads like even better than the water that the old one did. So, it's better than the other way around. So we just have to move the old one, we're gonna move that up to the raw water, so we have a way to measure raw water up top other than just a graph sample. So that's the last of the capital improvements. Tank project. So do we just want to kind of run through this and then talk about the other alternatives, or how do we want to, how do you want me to go?
What do you mean by run through this? You know,
I just kind of give my normal update.
Yeah,
and,
give your normal update and then we'll get.
Okay, so we received the bids back on the 12th. Unfortunately, they were higher than estimated. Every engineer's nightmare, right? You do your best to estimate it. It was about 10% over, the whole project's about 10% over right now. We're at about, we had estimated it was going to be about 3.9. It's going to be closer to like 4.3 in that neck of the woods. 10%, but that's with no contingencies. We burnt up all the contingencies, right? And so there's going to be some changeovers. And when we first got the bids, I put together a spreadsheet, and I tell you, my wife will tell you it's been the worst week at my house ever. I told you I was off by $300,000 is what happened. It was a $300,000 we've already spent. I was right to the very second to last column. So the reality is, rather than spending between $360,000 and $459,000 to get through, it's going to be between best case, it's going to be about 590, no change orders, which isn't realistic. It's just not. Up to $757,000. Now, of that, 200 you've already accounted for. So the amount over, this is the real number, the amount over what I told you last time, and what you expected to spend, it's going to be between 390 more out of reserves, up to worst case at a 5% change order rate, 558,000. Okay, so it's $300,000 more than what I told you guys the last time. That was in the last step.
And at the last meeting, we said we were going to be over by how much?
200.
It was the construction estimate was 208,000 over, including contingency, and then the soft costs have added up. So we're 380 total over the project.
Right.
Budget, yeah.
380 total.
Total, but no, that's with no change orders.
Right.
Which,
and you're anticipating, so if you're anticipating 5%,
65% on the up
change orders, so we're looking at going over the budget by 500.
You said between 590 and 750.
Okay.
Yeah, 590. Yes, that's total to complete. Right. What needs to come out of above anticipated reserves is that yellow. It's 390 up to 560. Is that's kind of bracketing a realistic world. You know, if things are going to change out. So I talked to Dawn, you know, right when that happened, and I think yours has the I have an older version. So right now that would leave you guys with between 619 to about 450 left in reserves after the project. That was based on the December 31st, Dawn.
Right. December 31st, 2019.
619,000.
Left in reserve, yeah. Yeah, 1.2.
As a high of leftover reserve, on a low of 452.
And what's our reserve percentages compared to our revenues?
I don't know what that percentage is.
Are we 5%, 10%? What are we keeping in our reserves right now?
Well, in the reserves right now is we have $1.2 million in reserves.
Okay, and this is without new revenues being accounted for?
That's correct. That's at December 31st for the balance sheet.
Okay.
So it basically requires the district to contribute more than we originally had anticipated. So we do have reserves. We weren't anticipating to lower our reserves that much. So the question of the district is, are we willing to pay the additional difference and then move forward with lower reserves?
Until we can go back.
Right. Though building them back up eventually is going to become harder once we start paying on the debt.
What do we,
So this is cost up front. Rather than that.
Yeah, this is out of pocket money, yes. Right. So this increase, originally we were only going to contribute out of pocket the 300,000.
500.
Yeah. And now we have this, we have to contribute more in order to keep the project going because our loan amount is static.
Okay.
So.
Oh, okay, so.
Our loan amount is based on the rate study that was done, and what we can, and what the USDA was willing to fund at the time for the project.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Right, based on the original estimate, then that was low, and it's hard to change the loan amount. I've talked to USDA about it, and they're aware of what's going on in the meetings now, and they would prefer that it could get handled out of, rather than open up the letter of covenant conditions and change the loan amount, which would trigger then going back and looking at rates and all that.
So I think that's the decision. We basically need to decide whether we're going to go forward with the project as we have set it up and would be willing to contribute the more money, or not go forward and look at other alternatives. Right? I think that's,
or rebid it.
Or rebid it.
Roll the dice and see what the future market.
Right. So again, go over and then look at the other alternatives, which is one of which is rebidding or changing the project altogether. I think another one. I don't know if we want to, if everybody wants to start talking about the alternatives right now, or
just from a perspective of process and protocol, based on the interest that was expressed by some of the community members, this might be a good time if you're thinking about making a decision now based on Jerry's report.
Yeah.
That this would be a time to take public comment.
Yeah. Well, first of all, is there any questions amongst the board before we open it up?
Well, Jerry and I talked yesterday, and we both, I think, are in agreement that interest rates are only going to get worse. I think we're in a really good position right now to get to the bottom line. If we go forward now, I think we're in a pretty good position. If we rebid or whatever, I think in the long run it's going to cost us more money than we're looking at right now. So that's one way to look at it.
If you, and this was in the packet that you had sent out. I didn't reproduce everything, or I did reproduce everything. I didn't bring multiple copies. It's about a $27,000. If this is all speculative, right? If rates stay at the 2.75, which they are now, as opposed to 3.87, which that was our letter of commitment, we get the lower, never goes higher than that, but if it's lower, we get that. It's about a $27,000 a year savings in payment, principal and interest on the 4-year term. For that, which is substantial over 40 years, right? That's a lot of money.
May I interject something, please? I don't see where I can raise my hand. May I interject?
I'll bring up the opportunity to.
Yeah, I don't, unfortunately, this time I don't see where I can raise my hand. I'm sorry, Rolanda.
It's all right. I made a note to call on you, Diane. Just give us a
Okay, thank you.
Well, Jerry and I talked about yesterday. But if we look at the cost the next year, 2 years or 3 years, and we're paying more because we don't rebid it or whatever, we don't do the hard shell cover or whatever. We look at that cost at today's, assuming we get a good rate, today's rate, or we put things off for a year or so, and then we get hit with a higher interest rate, and then plug that over 40 years. There's a real good chance it might cost us more money than to not go forward what we're with now. So it's easy to look at it short term, but we're talking 40 years, and the higher interest rate over 40 years is going to rack up.
That's a lot of money. So that's what you have to look at, your actual cost. Your potential higher interest rate of 3.8.
3.87.
Yeah, 3.87 versus a 2.75 right now. It doesn't sound like much, but when you run that 27,000 over 40 years, that's a lot of money.
But we're not guaranteed at,
Yeah.
but we're not guaranteed at 2.75. But it's just that if it closed today or right now, it would be at 2.75.
Right.
It would be whatever it is.
Right,
a year and a half.
I'm done, yeah, I realize that.
I just want to make sure.
Oh, yeah, oh, yeah, the
It's 2.75 is if everyone had written out. So the cap is the 3.
Right, and I understand.
So there's a potential to realize savings on the interest rate that we weren't expecting before. I think that's what we're trying to say, right? The other thing I just want to add is that there's also a whole lot of sunken costs that are going to be wasted in terms of our effort that we've gotten so far. So we've edited that, all that work and effort is going to cost us money, and then we're going to have to go back and do it. We have to redesign, that's other costs.
Environmental.
All these different costs that we already incurred that we basically become sunken costs. Some of those we can probably, we may be able to save, but chances are that we're almost potentially starting from scratch if the alternative is a different design.
And that's understood. Right. It is like those are huge losses, right?
Right.
That we can never recoup.
Right. You have anything to add, or?
May I interject now, please?
In my position as far as,
Yeah.
I understand.
Okay. Yeah, Diane, yes, you can interject now. Sorry, I just want to make sure every board member is given the first opportunity to.
That's fine. I wish I had I can't see the hand raising thing. So I want to interject that you're making speculations over what you think is correct, but has anybody gone to the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the Bank of International Settlements and listened to any of their podcasts and or their presidents talk about where this is going? I have. The projection for the World Bank is 15 months of the worst recession since 1929. I forwarded that information to Don just prior to the meeting. They are projecting in the chart that the United States will dip below -6% globally. They won't see a correction to 3% until 2021. So what you're saying about locking, two things, and I brought it up last time. This is bloated out, and that bid went out before any of this happened. And you're going to have a lot of people really hammering for work. The interest rates will plummet more. And if you were basing it on actually listening to the banksters who are actually manipulating and resetting our entire global financial system, you would have a better feel for where you're going. You have no idea this is going to be a 1929 on steroids. And that is from their mouths, not mine. I yield.
Anyone else want to comment?
I'll comment. This is Tiffany Vanderlinden. After the last meeting, I ended up talking to a very good friend of mine that was a big muck-a-muck, let's just say, at Home Depot about bids. And he said, absolutely, I would put it out to rebid. He's like, everything after, this whole COVID thing is up for pencil sharpening. So I guess, and he helped me kind of understand at this point that, yeah, I mean, all these contractors are going to be, changing numbers. So I guess that I'm maybe now more on the line of let's go rebid it again. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Or Tiffany, would you also agree that we look at other options that may be a cheaper way for us to
Yeah,
go?
I do. I would like to look at the other options that might be cheaper.
Any other comments from any other community members?
Yeah, Greg here.
Yes.
I like the idea of looking at possibly rebidding as well. This echoes of when we built the house here. We had the same thing. It ended up looking really over budget, like we almost were not going to do it. And then we went and explored a little bit, made some modifications in the plants, not majorly, so we didn't lose the sunk costs, and then found a different contractor, and it was a lot less, and we were able to do it. Principle may apply at this level, I'm not sure, but that's something that I'd second, that idea that Tiffany brought up.
Do we want to look at the alternatives that we might have when we discuss those?
I have a concern about any other alternatives that doesn't give us long-range support and maintenance and protections, particularly based on the fact that what I heard last time was that the state of California does not support caps or domes, but rather supports the tank piece. But having said that, I also know that it might be valuable enough for us and save enough money in the long run to check with legal counsel to see if we can just pull and go out for an immediate rebid and see what we get, as long as we're not sued for doing that, because I don't know that process personally. It would seem to me that going out one more time, if we can maintain our cap and if we can get this turned around quickly, that will give us another idea of what is really out there. And we may have the best deal in town and we might not. So that is the only, I think from my perspective, I really want to see something in place that's going to protect Christian Valley Park and protect our water supply and do it the right way. But if we can do it in a different bid, in a timely manner, and keep our cap, and we don't get sued in the process, then I'm all for that.
What's our timeline for USDA loan?
Yes, so USDA in the letter of conditions, we have to be, and they said, and I would, okay, let me answer the question. We have to be, according to the letter of conditions, we have to be under construction by September of this year. It's a year basically from the LOC, and they gave us the extension to last September. So it's 1 year from last September. So that's it. Mike Lucas at USDA, we talked about a couple of things. One, what we're talking about here, and that's when he brought up the interest rate and that kind of stuff. Two, we talked about with the engineer, Mike Strinsky, this whole concept with the virus to Diane's point. I can't predict what's going to come out of this, right? We might be smoking come September and market time, or it could be status quo, could be a tank. It does provide some level of risk to us that we get a contractor out there, and then he gets behind for whatever reason. He didn't put manpower on it, or maybe it's legit, it's his crew's thing. And then all of a sudden we get to a point where, hey, when I will finish this tank by November, right? So that kind of throws the whole schedule into an abyss, in terms of getting to by June of 2021 before we go through a hot season. So there is, and the longer we wait, the more we're kind of moving into that world, in terms. So, it's not only the cost, I think, of the project, because we don't know what's going to happen in the fall, right? If that's when we want to rebid, I need to revisit that schedule. We might want to bid it in December so that we'll talk about that. But the other risk that we do have as a district is we don't know workforce, supply chain, stuff like that, and all of a sudden we get a project that we blow the schedule, and now we got to go through summer with only one tank in half of our storage. That to me is another good valid reason. I don't want to say to a contractor, hey, this is because we're trying to get a better deal, right? That's part of it. It's definitely part of it. It might be a better bidding environment, but also there's real schedule concerns. They're gonna say, hey, we can do it. We can do it. I can assure you that until the other contract. Right. And our attorney told us that because this came up at the last meeting, I don't know if I'm saying it. Okay. So, yeah, so anyway, those are all good valid reasons.
And then they have to wait till the bids are stale.
May I also add that the Federal Reserve just posted on their website as of today that the Federal Reserve takes an additional actions to provide up to 2.3 trillion in loans to support of economy. And it says help state and local governments manage cash flow stresses caused by coronavirus pandemic by establishing a municipal liquidity facility that will offer up to 500 billion in lending to states and municipalities. The Treasury will provide 35 billion of credit protection to the Federal Reserve for the municipal liquidity facility using funds appropriated by CARES Act. I yield.
So I don't know if there's any other discussion. Again, I think the decision is we either move forward or we decide that we don't move forward and we look at rebidding and other alternatives. Because I think once we decide not to move forward, then we open the table for a lot of different options.
And I think we're owed that. Thank you. Being given other options. And I think that would be wonderful now to open the floor to CST reps.
Hi, this is Bonnie. Can you hear me?
Yes, Bonnie.
Hi. Listen, as I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about my comments last month, which were basically that, we haven't seen anything like this ever before. Really, no one has a crystal ball. And I think that chasing interest rates and, to repeat myself from last month, I spent 20 years managing a $200 million city portfolio. That also included bond sales and reinvestment of bond proceeds. It would be very expensive and time consuming to, take a big step back and rebid this. Jerry could speak to how many different contractors actually do this kind of work and whether he'd be going to the same contractors for a new bid or to new contractors. But I really think that particularly in times like this, it's important to stay the course. I managed money through, the downturn in 2009, through the big October meltdown in, I guess it was 1987. And I really encourage you to not be reactionary. I think it's really important to look at all of the alternatives, but we have decided, or you have decided, to move ahead with this project. No one knows what tomorrow is going to bring. With all due respect, Diane, on the one hand, you're talking about the banksters. On the other hand, you're talking about, listen to what the Fed said they're going to do for us. Being on the receiving end of funds or non-receiving of funds for local agencies for, as I said.
Because we have to work within the matrix, excuse me, Bonnie, and I respectfully decline your perspective because you're not looking at, you're looking at an environment that's completely unformed.
Diane, she has the floor right now.
Diane, please do not interrupt me. Okay. There are many things that are proposed that never actually filter down to real monies for local government. I hope this is not the case, but it could be. And so as a member of the community and an interested party in the workings of the board, I would encourage you to move ahead as planned. Understandably, there are hiccups in terms of the amount of monies that need to come out of reserves. And I would also suggest that now or at some point very soon, we come up with, or the board come up with, a reserve policy. Most local agencies have a policy that addresses a percentage or a percentage of revenue or a dollar amount of reserves, minimum reserves. I think that's appropriate here.
But again, back to the issue at hand, I really encourage you to move forward. And that's all I have to say on that issue.
Greg, I see that you raised your hand, or was that from the previous time?
Yeah, I raised it again. With all the discussion in there, do we have the 300,000 that appeared in this latest go round available to do it, to go ahead? I missed that detail. Is that true?
Yes, we have plenty of reserve to cover the difference.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think I can soften my position on doing a rebid, given that I didn't realize it's that painful of a process. So I guess I'd move more toward Bonnie's position and suggest that we go forward, since we can do it. We have the means to do it. And for all the reasons given, it makes sense to do it.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm going to make a motion that we move forward with this project with the increased cost from our reserve. I think the time is right, and because there are no guarantees, and Bonnie, you made a great point, there's no guarantee that we're going to get any different contractors that have already bid on it. So
Please open the floor, Kathleen.
Well,
Before you make a motion, I think it's only fair to the rest of the community. I speak for a great deal of those people. And that's what I'm hoping, that you're fiduciarily responsible for at this point. And CST, at least hear them out, please. I would appreciate that much. Thank you.
So
if they would like to speak on the item on the agenda, all they have to do is raise their hand.
This is.
Tiffany, go ahead.
Are you talking to me? Yes?
Tiffany, yes.
Tiffany, okay. So in talking with my friend Rich Feaster, he had said, or he gave me an example of a big time concrete guy from down south, and he's got multiple crews up in the area. Basically, he was saying that he was pulling all of his guys out of the Bay Area because they were in lockdown, to move up to Placerville, where they were a little bit lenient. And yes, I'm talking about a concrete contractor, but it did sound to me like a majority of the big time contractors are, shuffling and moving things around and their people around in order to, complete jobs and, and continue on other jobs that they're doing. So that's going to lead me still to believe that we should go out for a rebid, because we're not talking about the financial aspect. We're actually talking about the dollars that it's going to cost us to do the project. These are different times. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, but it seems to me that things are changing. I'm done. Sorry.
Thank you, Tiffany. Is there anybody else from the community that wants to speak?
Yes, it's Marlene. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm more in line with Tiffany and Diane to go out for a rebid, because times are different now than what they were when we got our first bid. And I'm finding that things in this area are probably going to go a lot cheaper, because people have stopped doing a lot of projects because they can't get near one another, basically. The COVID's really changed a lot of aspects of it. And I think it would be really advantageous to us to go out for another bid. And I'm done.
And this is Heidi. I would like to speak. I think anyone who thinks this is business as usual is mistaken. It has nothing to do with having a crystal ball. It has to do with the reality of our global pandemic that we're in. Everyone knows what's happening now with the stock markets and the businesses, and we're in a different situation than we've ever been in before. And to make a decision, and I said this at the last meeting, to make a decision about this now, and I'm not saying anything about the fact that it isn't completely needed, an overhaul of the water system. We all agree. There's no one here that doesn't agree that that's not needed. But at the same time, we have to, under these really unusual circumstances, we have to look at some alternatives, and we have to look at the fact, the absolute fact, that when there's a major economic downturn, things change financially. That doesn't take a crystal ball. And so to go ahead with the contract under these circumstances is really foolish at this time. That doesn't mean that there aren't risks involved in doing that. As Jerry pointed out, there are risks. But you can't just go ahead blindly, which is what you are doing if you go ahead with this project without looking at some other bids and some other alternatives, which are out there. So, I mean, that's all I have to say. I've said it before. I feel like a broken record. I hope the board members will actually listen to the input from people in this community, because, you know, you're our representatives. We can't vote, but you can. But you need to listen to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. Is there anybody else that wants to comment?
I'm going to also comment for Cindy because she, this is Heidi again. I'm going to comment for Cindy Bergman. She is surprised that the board member and doesn't understand why the board is going ahead with this major project without looking into the option of Placer County Water Agency, you know, taking over the water board, okay? Because that was brought up before and she wanted to make that comment. That is not my comment, that is her comment. I tend to agree with her that that was another option to look at. The Placer County Water Agency may be able to incorporate our district, okay? And I don't know the details about that, but she wanted to comment. She's also not comfortable with, you know, going ahead under the circumstances. Thank you.
Can I speak to Placer County at all, or should I just truly?
I guess go ahead.
Well, just the consolidation was discussed with Placer County Water Agency, albeit on an informal basis with the Director of Technical Services, Brent Smith. And his comment was, well, you know, how many connections? Everybody would be required to pay a connection charge to buy capacity into their system. And he estimated on that it would be $12 million right off the top to buy capacity in their system. And we didn't discuss in details in terms of, would you still have to have your own storage, right? You'd be a wholesale customer potentially, or they may require you to put in additional storage. So right off, he answered very quickly. It wasn't formal, but he implied, and I've seen it happen before, where the district, the entity being taken over has to pay a connection charge. Up at Dutch Flat, that's happening, but I believe it's going to be via a tremendous loan or grant from the state. It's going to take years. They've been working on it for years.
Excuse me. I think the point being here is, Jerry, is we've heard that several times. I had a meeting with Tiffany, myself, and Lynn quite a while back with Brent Smith. And when we were talking to him, he somewhat quoted a rough quote of half of what you're saying, like 10,000 per hookup. When you look at it over the terms of 40 years, yeah, that's a lot of money, but then we're being shared with a wider customer base. And I think it was incumbent upon the board to have gotten a hard quote from PCWA and worked that out, because I've been asking for that since October of last year, and it keeps getting brushed over with the same rhetoric of the 20,000 buy-in as a rough quote. So there's never, you know, respectfully speaking, we've never seen anything outside your engineering box. I suggest that we at least get a view outside of your box and what other alternatives are out there. I believe as a community, we are owed that. And you are our fiduciaries, you are our trustees. We are the beneficiary of the system. We absolutely want to see the upgrades, but we also want to see it within a budget that is not going to collapse a great deal of those 626 parcel owners. So please, I ask you one more time, open the floor to CST and at least bring it out. Thank you. I know, Jerry, you had a dialogue with Edgar. So you already have spoken with CST, which should make a precedence for having this dialogue openly and publicly. Thank you. I yield.
If I could make one quick comment, we did look at this in 2011 and came up with some numbers. There was a lot of uncertainties with the soils and whatnot. And I did talk to Edgar to refresh, the budgetary cost number on that. So it was looked at years ago, and I think revisited a couple of times in between. But I'll yield.
Okay, I have another question.
Hold on, please.
I was in that meeting with PCWA, and when we got them discussing, and he presented how much it would be per unit to join, all our eyebrows raised, and even PCWA said it would make no sense, absolutely no sense for you guys to do that because you already have the infrastructure and the water treatment plant and everything in place. It's every bit as good as what we have, or better. He said it would make no sense whatsoever to do that. PCWA's recommendation.
Lynn, but what we didn't broach with Brent at the time was actually bypassing our system and buying a treated water from them and just decommissioning our plant. We didn't broach that with them. We just looked at it. We looked at it from the perspective of them just taking over and still having a water plant there. So I was looking at for a hard estimate as to those two options. That's all. But I'm just refreshing your memory, Lynn. Thank you. I yield.
Okay, may I speak now?
Yes, who is this?
It's Marlene.
Okay, yes, Marlene, please.
Yes, I would like to know that, is it just one person that is looking into all this, or have you guys established a small committee to where they can look at all the options, or did you just rely on one person?
I think it depends. I guess what options are you looking at? We've had a number of people working. Well, some of these options are new, and no, they haven't been looked at by a group of people. Some of these options have been on the table and they've been discussed by a number of people on the board. I don't think that we didn't, when these options were on the table, we didn't have the interest from the community to look at them, but they were reviewed at that time by, Jerry provided some guidance. I looked at some things on my own and did some researches, and I believe the other board members did as well. 2 of those board members are no longer on the board, but all these things was being looked at. Our biggest concern, and has always been, I just want to say this one thing, is that to make sure that we have the money to take action. So we are not going for extra money. We're not trying to get more in debt. We are trying to use the money that we have saved by trying to manage the money as best as we can within the community, within the district. Which we've been able to save a lot of money over the course of the 6 years, 4 years, 5 years that we've been collecting the money. I think we've done a good job of putting it into the reserve to make sure that we are able to take the action that the community needs in order to support having good water. So I don't feel that we are exceeding that budget. We're exceeding the original estimates of the budget. We had decided we were going to do the tank many years ago. That's not, so yes, we can introduce new options now, but then basically that means starting from scratch, because each of those options is going to have to be reviewed, just like this one was way back then when we talked to the USDA about going from 1 tank to 2 tank. We went through all these decisions over the course of many years now to develop the design and alternative that we have now. I think what people need to consider is that if we want to consider all these other options, which whether we join the Placer County Water Agency or not, has a lot of pros and cons. When they have been reviewed in the past, the board has decided against it. historically. We can do that. However, then we could arrive at the conclusion that it's not worth it, and then we're back to square one, and now we could potentially have a more cost, less time, and increase the risk to the district, which is what I don't want to do, is to stand in front of the community and say, we can't give you good water. That's what I think I could justify, that we spent an additional 300,000 out of our reserve to provide good water. I'm going to have a hard time explaining why we got to the point where we had a boil order.
This is Bonnie. Can I make one more quick comment?
Yeah, nobody raised their hand. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Rolando. I just wanted to say that I know that the board has been considering the tank replacement project and alternatives for probably 3 years. And during that time, there were many, many discussions about replacing the cover, the different kinds of covers that we could consider, that it was a Band-Aid approach. And in fact, it was going to be difficult to get funding to replace a cover because it is a Band-Aid approach, and those monies would have to come out of reserves. And after a tremendous amount of hard work and consideration and discussion on the part of the board and its consultants, that the decision was made to move ahead with the tank replacement project. And I really, and again, this is just as your newsletter editor, someone who's been following the activities of the board for, I think about 5 years now. I would be disappointed, and that's fine, I can deal with that. But I think that it's time to move forward. The community needs this. It's, you know, it's sort of like having, in fact, a neighbor of ours during the rate increase hearing, and we're talking about the tank replacement project as an aside, and he said it's kind of like having a car where you need new brakes and you just choose not to do that. And so we need to replace it. It needs to be done, and I really hope that that's a decision that you make.
Any other comment from anybody?
Yes, this is Heidi. In response to Bonnie's comments, it's not like getting the brakes replaced. So I kind of, that's crazy. But my question is, how many engineers were on the board when these decisions were made? Having a background in engineering geology, I'm curious as to how many informed people who have the engineering background were actually involved in making the decisions.
It was myself and probably 4 or 5 other people through the years. It's different staff that have worked with different firms.
4 or 5 other people on the board?
No, at other firms that have, engineers that have looked at it. There's 2 engineers now at Hydros. One's 80 years old and knows more than I'll ever forget. Yeah.
So none of the board members heard from you. You were the spokesperson about, so you were the single point of contact for the engineering side of it, correct? And then the board members heard your side of it, but they have not, and none of the board members specifically had engineering experience that were on the board.
With the exception of Chris has some construction engineering experience, yes.
Who? I'm sorry, it's hard to hear.
With the exception of Chris Calvert, who was on the board and resigned.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yes, I had my hand up real quick. So this is Tiffany Vanderlinden. So I guess where I'm going with this is that we're at a critical point, obviously with this whole COVID thing. We know that the people in our community are going to be, paying more money for, again, insurance, all this you know, all the variety of things that that is gonna go up. Not necessarily due to the COVID, but of previous things. So I guess what I'm looking at is how can we reduce our cost? I mean, is there other options that would be cheaper? So I would like to see other, you know, what other options there are out there for me. Thank you.
Hey guys, this is Ryan. I know that you guys had mentioned you'd wanted to possibly table the conversation to a later time, if at all applicable, to entertaining other options. That been privileged to listen into your guys' conversation here for the last hour or so, and kind of get my head a little bit further around what you guys are experiencing, all the ins and outs of budget constraints, time, previous efforts that have already been put forth in review and during the process. And from what I understand, this is a USDA governed grant or loan that you guys are applied for?
Yes.
Loan.
Okay, so it's all Davis-Bacon wages then that have to go for any kind of field installation? Is that right?
No Davis-Bacon, but prevailing wage.
Prevailing, so California state prevailing? Okay, so without diving far into what other alternatives or options or anything that we could possibly present, that will certainly show some value engineering, in my opinion. CST is a USDA approved supplier. We are deemed an essential service, so there's no downtime for us right now. Our plants are functioning, our guys are working, but there's certainly some avenues that I feel could provide some cost savings back to the team there. If ever given an opportunity to really jot down that path. I don't know if you guys have explored only welded as an option, or if you've looked at concrete, if you've looked at various types of bolted tanks as well. So I think that there's some value add that could be ascertained here without it being too much of a downturn. If you were to even put it off for a 30-day window of a potential rebid, or even just an evaluation of those bids and incorporating other looks and views of things. The September 2020 timeline for an in-start construction date is very well achievable, even if, say, we have a 60 to 90-day hiatus between, say, today and the date of award, if you do look at various other options that we may be able to present. So, yep, just want to make sure that's out there for at least an understanding point. Again, not trying to butt in and throw too many monkey wrenches into the whole scheme that's already been in play.
So we don't have an option to change our design, right?
Well,
if we're going to rebid, we're rebidding for the same design.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of different things here. We can't replace the existing 1.5 million gallons of storage without two tanks at that site, pump station, property lines, where everything lies. So putting a 1.5 million gallon tank isn't going to work. So then the option then would be to it might be able to get 1 million. It'd be tight, it'd be a little site. You'd drop out of that, 500,000 gallons of storage. The health department, the Division of Drinking Water, has given us and you've all heard the story. The question was, when are you going to get rid of the floating hypomount cover, right? So I think putting in a tank like we initially envisioned with a control structure to move water into the reservoir and then out, and eventually we save more money putting the second tank in there. I don't think we're going to get a lot of support from the Division of Drinking Water on that. It'll be a new 1 million gallon tank, take the old reservoir out of service. If we look at a 1 million gallon tank and then put an aluminum cover over there, I think we're going to be nearing the cost point. I mean, it's probably a little bit cheaper. I think putting an aluminum cover on could be a cheaper project. There's no doubt about it. I don't think it's as good a project in terms of there's no redundancy, relying on the existing levees. We have an inlet that has already failed. We have an outlet that now we're going to load up more. The single only source of supply to the district is that outlet. If that were to fail, we're out of water, we're tearing apart a levee, depending on the motor field. So, you know, those are kind of the primary, broad brush primary kind of options as I see.
So Jerry,
Yeah.
just quick question. So redundancy is a key caveat that you guys are looking for, which obviously that makes sense. So do you guys have a highline budget of what you guys had in mind right now? That I'm just not privy to it, obviously, as I'm kind of stepping into the game here late. I mean, are you 1 million, 2 million, 10 million? What are you guys anticipating to have set aside as an engineer's estimate for this?
The goal was the initial estimate from 2017 was 3.9 million total.
Okay, and
Those were just 800, 3.8.
Okay, and that was to put in 2 new tanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cut piping and some electrical SCADA work as well.
Okay, so just as a project we recently completed in Chowchilla, which is not too far from there, what, maybe like an hour and 30 minutes from Auburn, give or take. And
You know where Auburn is?
I do, just north of Sacramento. Yeah.
Isn't Chowchilla down in Southern California?
No, Chowchilla is in Central Valley.
Okay, go ahead.
Anyhow, we completed 2 800,000 gallon usable tanks for them. It was a municipal project. The net came at less than, let's see, we came in at less than $1.1 million for the whole project, full turnkey with foundations and everything included at prevailing state California wages. And that was with the glass fused to steel tanks. And so you have many options beyond, those are just, because we have the storage and tank division, which I represent, and then Edgar represents the covers division for the aluminum cover that would be possibly entertained for the larger reservoir. So I mean, I think it might be prudent, again, me as an outsider, obviously as a businessman nonetheless, to at least open up the dialogue further to showcase some value back to you guys. Obviously not this evening, but over maybe the course of the next week.
If I could also say something real quick. Sorry to interrupt. If I say something also real quick, I know that Jerry and I spoke about this maybe a couple of days ago, and another option could have been or could be to remain with the existing reservoir. If you guys keep that existing reservoir the way it is and build maybe an outside wall to support what we call a multi-truss system, and you can pretty much enclose that entire system and keep that tank at a more economical price without having to demolish it or remove it from any of its location as it stands now. As I told Jerry, we're doing one in Camp Pendleton right now that it's 105 by 105, and we're doing that for about $600,000. That's delivered materials and installed. For a basin this size, about 110 by 165, you could do it for about $1 million or so. That C.S.D. delivered and installed. And like Ryan said, we're not seeing any slowdown in our work right now. We're really busy at the time, and being that we're an essential part of the infrastructure, we don't see any slowdowns whatsoever right now. So that, again, if you guys happen to entertain the option of maybe looking at that, that's also another option that could save you money in your community. And I think another thing, if you don't take our option, I think the other thing would be for you guys to rebid it. Even in the way it stands right now, I think you guys are willing to get better prices from the constituents that bid this thing. Given the way things are now, I'm sure you guys get a more economical number, and overall, if you don't decide to take our options. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Edgar. Hey, Brian, just to clarify on the tanks that you discussed, those are 2 800,000 gallon tanks?
Correct.
Okay.
And yeah, these were if you're familiar, I don't know if you are, but it's a USDA approved product that they do most of their federal grants through. It's called our Aquastore tank, is our trade sake to it, or it's a glass fused steel sort of material, where instead of having a welded, field welded tank application. This product is done in a factory where it's encapsulated in a porcelain kind of glassing process, and then it's field erected. There's no hot work, there's no blasting, coating. You don't have to go through any more EPA or county mandated or state mandated loopholes to try to adhere to various regulations. It's really turnkey and very fast of a process. Typically, you're going to see, versus just my experience on looking at welded tanks to this application, not only do you see the production process go in and get done much quicker, but the life expectancy of the tanks is much longer with less total cost of ownership back to the owner.
I was asking if that is what you're talking about, would that change our bidding requirements?
Yeah, it would be, so right now it's AWWA spec for steel tank, and what Ryan's talking about is the glass coated their panels, it's a bolted system so they don't weld it, but the benefit of what you're discussing is it's all done, the coating is done in basically a shop setting and it's glass, right? So it's not as likely to corrode. Hey Ryan,
yeah.
So our average price for two tanks was about 1.3 million for the two 750s. It's been my experience in the past that, you know, when office stores kind of on their own, right, usually they're they seem to be a little bit more expensive with the glass fused panels, but, you know, maybe things have changed, or these were knuckled welded steel tank 750, so half would be about just under 700,000 each is what these bids came in.
And is that with foundations included, full turnkey, or?
Yes, that is with the foundation.
So all overX, subgrade, compaction.
Yeah, no, the overX, there was an overX in the drawings, in particular under tank 1. That was a separate line item. I mean, I'm happy to send you the bid calculation. I mean, you guys can take a look. I mean, an option here, a legitimate option, would be to open the spec up to glass fused and welded steel, right? And then let the better tank manufacturer or director, you know, get it, right? What I would hate to do is go down that path. You know, we got to talk to USDA, make sure they're okay with it. I think that's probable, right? We gotta, we're speculating, we don't know what, okay? I'd hate to go through all this and have the people work.
Right. Or then these are not valid options.
Well, no, it's a valid.
No, I'm saying that for other people, you know, I think it's we can achieve it. But then we go through this process and now, well, that option didn't work out. Let's consider the Placer County Water Agency one. Right. You know, we have to make a decision and
I do have a question though. How difficult is it to change the specs on a bid and rebid and set a shorter timeline for the bid?
If this is the only change we're talking about, a day. I mean, that's fast. I mean, it's really just adding an alternative, you know, a day, a week, or less. It's easy to put that in as an option for them to bid. But hey, Ryan, back to that number. I mean, forget about the overX. That was a separate number. Are you guys competitive with the 1.4-ish in the 750,000 gallon? And there's not, it had internal overflow, had one inlet, one outlet, no baffles. It had an internal ladder, external ladder, safety, staff gauge. You know, it's a typical thing.
Yep. Yeah, all the standard bells and whistles to keep it OSHA compliant. Also AWWA, whether in this case it'd be D100, in our case it'd be D103. But yes, yeah, all that, including the foundations, overX compaction, subgrade, that's a very viable number in my opinion.
Do you think you could be under it? Because that's the question, would we save money or not?
not only would you, in my opinion, not only would you save money on the front end, with with welded tanks, there's a huge potential for change orders that are all surrounded with weather-related implications. There's a number of different facets that all come in with a welded tank that they can't control, which do cost overruns. You know, if you start getting a lot of dust or moisture,
Right.
things like that in there, I mean, you're well aware, it seems, that how the process works for field-coded applications. And so with ours, you don't have to concern yourself with that. You set a really strict schedule and timeline, and we adhere to it, I would say 9 times out of 10 to a T. And that's simply because we don't have all these misnomers that come into play. We can build these things in the dead of winter in the snow. And so it's just a matter of us using some impact guns and putting it together. And so, yeah, really, it's, in my opinion, these things are not only, like I said, more cost effective, I believe, on the front end, but if you were to take a 50-year lifespan snapshot at what it costs to actually to maintain a welded tank, every 12 to 15 years, you're going to have to blast and recoat that tank again. And so I don't know if that's been taken into account from your guys' evaluation at this time as longevity and over total lifespan maintenance of these tanks. You know, typical welded tank, you're maybe going to get 50, 70 years out of it, right? And that's if you do the actual maintenance the way you should be doing it every 12 to 15 years, where you take it down to bare steel and you recoat the whole thing. With ours, the only thing that you have to do is maybe replace some sealant, maybe some hardware, which obviously, if you run the numbers and you really look at it, if you put $15 a square foot at bare minimum for blast and recoat from any welded tank contractor out there that's doing their own field applied coatings, that's probably still a low number, especially at California state prevailing wage rates. Whereas if you're simply doing some sealant replacement, you have 2 tank redundant systems, so you could take one fully out, still operate the other one at full capacity, do a sealant repair, let's call it 15, 20 years down the road, and that costs you 1/16 the cost of what it would do a blast and recoat, and you have to do that maybe twice over the lifespan of a tank, where you have to do a blast and recoat, let's call it 5 times over the course of a tank at the same lifespan period. There's a tremendous amount of cost savings that can be ascertained.
I have a question. What are they seismically rated?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
Actually,
oh, okay.
It's the coating. And there's, these guys go back and forth on glass coated. I mean, it's, and it's a good tank, but you know, if you say you guys can beat that by a handy margin, I'll take your word for it. But I worry that.
Yeah, I would like to evaluate a geotechnical report if you guys have one, which I'd imagine you would. If you could get me something like that, we can take a quick look at it here over the course of the next couple of days this week, really get our arms around it a little bit more. If you have the existing spec that I can also review, that would put us you know, right down the same path of understanding, then I can even give a preliminary you know, value back to your team here for review to really understand without having it even go back out to bid. As I do agree that would be, you know, in the early onset stages here of really understanding if it's a viable option or not. You know.
Well, I guess I'm just going to throw this out. So right now there's 2 welded steel tanks. There's potential 2 glass tanks. Basically the same project. The tanks are just going to be different. A big chunk of the cost of the project was the earthwork, site piping, dealing with all that. So there's still a lot of money out there. What about the cover? You know, the cover makes me nervous, covering that existing reservoir. You know, Edgar. So anyway, I just want to be clear on what we're doing. Okay.
And you might even be able to see some perceived value if the structural integrity of that concrete reservoir is still intact, by scrapping that old liner and potentially putting on an aluminum cover for that, keeping your 1.5 million gallon tank in service still, and then potentially adding, let's just call it one 750 versus two 750s and completely mothballing the old concrete tank, that would maybe even give you more value. Because now you're taking it from a 1.5 million gallon capacity net for your entire facility or for your entire district. Now you're taking that back into service, and then you're tacking on another 750, or even call it another million you can put in. And so you have your redundancy, you have various aspects covered, but obviously you'd want to evaluate and make sure that your concrete tank could even last for another 25 years or plus.
Yeah, it's an earthen tank with a gunite liner.
Oh, okay.
Which,
right.
Yeah, you have to see it to understand what we're dealing with. But, okay, so.
Explain what you're, you want to tell them what you're interested in accomplishing.
What I would like to do is to be able to change one part of the bid spec to include what Brian has talked about, and connect with whoever we need to connect with to make sure it's going to be okay. But it sounds like if we've got a pre-approval from the USDA on that, then to rebid, to give Ryan an opportunity to bid in and give us something to take a look at and move forward, because I do believe that we've identified the option that we need to do to put into place, and that's the tank. But whether it's the steel tank or the glass, that remains to be seen, and I don't know how to frame that. So that's why I'm saying what I'm saying, because I don't know how to frame the motion.
And then the second thing I think I would like to accomplish with that is then we're putting this bid out to bid again. So there's a potential that the vendors are going to have to really evaluate what their price is, right? And consider the state of the affairs right now.
Exactly.
So we accomplish that, as well as, so there's a potential for two opportunities for cost saving. One is by the type.
Two, by taking a look at a different type of tank, and two, by reviewing the process. But I'd like to do it on an expedited bid process rather than the typical long-term one that gets used. But I don't know how to say it. So,
and then two just other things: attorney input and USDA that September date.
Yeah.
Yes.
We voted on it.
I haven't done a motion yet. I don't know how to say that.
My brother just retired. He's a civil engineer. He was in charge of everything on the Colorado River north of the main canyon. All the reservoirs, all the water projects, everything. He had 35 engineers working. I talked to him about this. He said, two things I'm going to tell you. He said, don't let money and don't let politics get in the way of sound engineering, number one. He says, because money and politics 30 years from now won't mean a whole thing. Okay, but sound engineering will, because it will be a new project, even though you may have paid a little more upfront. He said, in the long run, you better all stick with good common sense and good engineering. And so I said, well, we're talking about putting a cover, a hard shell cover over a gunite in-ground. There's a second option to a tank, right? And he said, here's the issues there. The hard shell cover is only good as the foundation it's built on, and the foundation is only as good as the soil it's in. He says, that's iffy. The second thing is it's a gunite lined pool, and he says it's 60 years old. And when you pull the cover, the inside cover off of that, you're going to find out you're going to have to redo the whole thing. So we're not talking just an aluminum hard shell cover. If we're going to refurb that in-ground, I think we're talking a lot more money. So it's something we need to consider.
Yeah.
Right.
I have concerns over putting a big structure on that levee. Big time.
Should the levy be evaluated someday?
It would have to be evaluated. Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of take us back again to what I wanted to do to get us moving in the right direction, I think, is to make a motion, but I don't know how to do the wording on the motion. So if I can have some help on that, knowing that I I would like to have that additional option. I would like it to be a quick turnaround. I know we're gonna have to go back out to rebid, and I know it's contingent upon legal counsel saying that we are not gonna be sued for this, and USDA is saying it's good, we're good as long as we can meet their timelines. That makes sense?
Yeah. The thing that scares me about all this discussion and everything we're talking about, and we've mentioned it briefly before, and that is the what if. None of us have a crystal ball. But the what if that we have some sort of a natural catastrophe and we lose that in-ground reservoir, which is very likely if we have any kind of a shaker at all.
And what if the economy gets better or worse? And there's so many what ifs. If I could,
We just don't know. So that's what scares me, because we're responsible for maintaining water for the district. And we're hanging it out, and the farther along we go, the thinner the prices get.
I get that. Yeah.
So I'm pretty much in favor of let's get it done.
I would like to get it done.
Yeah.
I would just like to have that one option.
If we can get them to give us an input, and we can put off USDA or whatever for 30 to 45 days and get some input from them, then I think we're in agreement.
Yeah.
That's maybe the way we should go.
I think so too.
But in the back of our minds, I think we have to be realistic and say, we have solid engineering, we know what we need to do. So based on what we find out from these guys, let's get it done.
So the motion on the table is to update the project to include the glass lined tanks. We submit it for a bid.
well, we have to resubmit to USDA.
Yeah. We have to go follow all the proper protocol, evaluate by the attorney, go to USDA. Then we submit it for new bids from all the vendors with the new requirement, right? And we want to do it as quickly as possible.
As soon as possible, yeah, the shortest timeline we can do.
Right. And I would say half seriously, half joking with Ryan, I don't see him there. You guys are going to bid this, right?
No, we just plan on hanging out in the wings and.
Look at all this, and I don't see CSD
Yeah,
in there.
the intent is to allow you to bid this time.
Okay, of course. No.
How long has your firm been around?
Say that one more time. I apologize.
How long has your firm been around?
This would be year 128.
Okay.
So, yeah, we certainly, we know what we're doing. We've been doing this a long time.
We have a motion on the table. Sorry, Ryan. Yeah, Ryan.
We need to be careful that we don't drag this into the point where we mess up our minimum construction
Funding.
And that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, we need to.
I am also concerned about that, but if we do this, I'd like you to be able to do this. If we can, I mean, we need to make a phone call to find out if it's even possible.
And we also owe it to Pastor Wolf's tank.
Right.
Because I know they're working on getting subs and getting everything. So I need to make a call to them as soon as I possibly can. And it's not going to be a pretty one, and that's why I want the attorney.
Right.
That's why you get.
Well, how quickly do you envision this happening?
No.
No. Oh.
No, they can't get turned around. I mean, we're going to have to deal with USDA. We're going to have to deal with the attorney. We're going to have to write the letter. We have to go back into those drawings and just kind of, I want to give stuff to Ryan, the geotech report. I can give you the site plan. I can give you the whole contract drawing set, the old stuff. Yeah. And the other piece of this puzzle is I need to go back and look, because it kind of makes, it may not make sense to try to award this in December, right? We might want to wait till January to award it, because right now, ideally they build tank one during the winter. It's back or during the summer, right? And then we take the big reservoir out during the winter so that we're not short during peak demand. I need to kind of see how that flows.
But keeping all that into account, I think still expediting at the very fast.
Oh yeah, we'll get it.
And moving forward with the concept of the tank. That's all.
Right.
Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
Question: What is the timeline for you guys to have each of the two tanks that you guys have on the table put into service?
It's two-phase. It's a 16, as it stood, it was a 16-month project with the first tank being installed. And maybe tomorrow we can get on the phone and with Google Earth. Right. Without getting into all the details, but there's some critical milestones so that the district doesn't operate during fire season peak demands with only 750,000 gallons of storage. So that's why that project got out to, the 14, 16 month, time range because of that and critical tie-ins and work up at the plant and some other stuff.
And
They have a mechanical branch that does earthwork, mechanical type stuff, or you guys tank erectors.
Yeah. What piece of that pie was set forth for just the tank package portion of that 14-month window? Or you say 14 or 16?
Well, it's basically 2 5-month increments in there.
So I don't want to.
Yeah, no,
right now. So
Yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to. Yeah.
We have a motion on the table. We discussed a couple other questions that we're going. Is anybody ready to second that motion? And do they understand what the motion is? So it's not going to happen in a couple weeks, right? So it's going to take some time. Yes. Yeah.
So Lynn Cook seconded.
Second. Okay.
Okay.
All in favor?
Roll call.
Yeah.
So.
I'm in favor if we can do it quickly.
Well,
That's not
I would say yes or aye or nay.
That's cheating. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
The
it's a
motion
roll
is
call
on
vote.
the table.
You have to say yes or no.
Yes, I'm going to.
Kathy? Aye. Rolando's not.
Okay.
Okay.
Right, and it was contingent on USDA giving us?
It was contingent on two things, USDA and legal counsel.
Okay, now, one thing I would like to, if we find out that this is a no-go, then we need to get a meeting back together to get.
Well, it's going to take that time. I don't think we're going to be done. So we'll have an update by the end of next month. Probably by the next month's meeting, right?
But if we have new information, oh wait, it's going to get re-hit,
Right, but if something goes wrong with the attorney or something goes wrong with USDA,
Yeah.
I think we do need to have another.
Okay.
Because we've got a whole.
Yeah. Well, as stuff happens, we'll report out and Don will call it. We'll let us know if we need to call another meeting. So I think that's always the process. Okay. Anything else for you, Jared?
Sorry.
Okay, then I think, thank you very much.
Okay, guys.
Jerry.
All right, see y'all. I'll be in touch for mid-morning.
Oh, actually, we do have one item due, but we're gonna skip down to the financial assistance program. If Jerry,
No, we haven't heard.
No, okay. That was.
I had it in there, placeholder, just in case.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
Excuse me, Rolando.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask what the company's name is. Ryan, what is your company name?
It is C.S.D. Industries, like Charlie, Sam, Tom.
Okay. And I have a question. I may have missed this in the beginning of the meeting, but how is it that you came about to be at this meeting?
It was at the request of one of the community members.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate you being here. This is what we've kind of been pushing for, is looking for alternatives.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
We're moving on. So, we've got the water. So, we have non-agenda items. Is there any information for anybody, a board member have any non-agenda items? Okay. So we're opening it up for public comment on anything that was not on the agenda. I'm not hearing any, I'm not seeing any hands raised up. So I'm going to move on to our section D of the administrative part. Do you have the review action items? Yeah. Oh, we didn't ask Jerry if we search for the utility easement on
This is the one where the guys put the fence in. It seems like he slowed down the project on that anyway, so we'll follow on that. Don, you posted the minutes on the internet. We have an item on the agenda for the clerk, so we'll wait to discuss that at the agenda item. We have the ADA compliant update on the agenda item, so we'll go by. We have the bylaws on the agenda.
Still want to do that tonight?
Yeah, we're going to move pretty quickly on that. We have our, so Dan, you're looking into the residents outside the district of the hydrant access. I thought we said that that's a no-go.
Well, Chris is not, I didn't get any information on
Yeah, I think we agreed that that was a no-go at the last meeting, right?
Yeah.
There's no way to charge for, okay, so let's take that action item or note that, yeah. I haven't had the opportunity to look at replacing the reflectors for the hydrant, so I'll talk to Paul about that first, right? Anything else on the action items? I think we're going to discuss the remaining on the next item. Okay. So I'm going to mute everybody because I'm getting music. Okay, stop.
Hey, buddy.
Next on the agenda, the new location for the meeting. Ron, do you have an update for that?
I don't have an update for that. I wanted to have the meetings at PCWA, except that it's not the right time with the COVID thing. So as soon as the COVID's over, then I'll be back in contact with them.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda has to do with the board stipends, which is a question that Diane raised in her letter. I'm going to combine that with the review of the bylaws. So I'm going to skip down and have you give the update on the bylaws. Kathy, please.
Okay. So I hope you can hear me. I spent the last few days taking a look at our code of ordinances and our current bylaws. I also took a look at sample bylaws from 4 different community service districts that are in California, a couple in rural areas and a couple that are in not as rural areas. Clearly they're all rural, and used a template for a nonprofit to do a draft, what I'm calling a working draft of bylaws that incorporates our current bylaws with some of the components from these other bylaws. And I would like to form a committee to take a look at that now as a group on what I put together and give some input on it. This will be made available to anybody who wants to see it, but not in its editable form. But I'd like the committee to work with me to give input on specific sections. If you want to have it as a board committee, or you want Dawn to develop a committee and bring back a working draft to the next meeting for review, and then have legal counsel review it for to make sure that we're meeting, all our bells and whistles are met. And part of that component does involve the stipends for board members, and I also am recommending that we do a study of other community service districts and what they pay and how they pay stipends, if they pay them at all, and that be incorporated as part of our bylaw review, and also as a part of the action that we take later on to approve the final draft once legal counsel has taken a look at it.
Any comments or questions on?
Want to come to my house?
Well,
I'd be happy to.
I'm actually going to assign Don to get a committee from the community, as well as someone from the board. It will be up to him to get together, work on the bylaws, and submit a proposal that we then will review and then take to an attorney. So
hammer it out, a preliminary,
absolutely,
bring it to the meeting, where the other board members look at it, and then have that to the community and say, this is what we propose.
We do need legal counsel's review.
And then go to right counsel.
Okay. It will be posted. I already have the draft done. It's 17 pages. So it needs to be toned down a bit. I know I'm a little bit worried, but it has all the right components in there and has incorporated all of our current bylaws, eliminating the non-essential parts with components that should have been in our bylaws that weren't. So it's pretty comprehensive. But if anybody wants to make a comment, they will be able to make a comment on it. They just won't be able to edit it as they review it. So you'll have the ability to take a look at the current bylaws, which are posted on our website, and look at this also and see it. But I'm happy to work with whoever wants to work with me. Whether it's additional community members that may want to sit in on the committee, remembering that this committee just is a recommendation to the board and doesn't have any decision-making power.
Okay, so we're gonna.
So now you two will work together to refine the bylaws better.
We'll work on what I've already done.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Compare them.
they'll bring that for.
And then we'll let it get published. So we can hand it out at the next meeting and then we can work.
Right. And I project this to be at least a 2-meeting process. So I anticipate the bylaws being adopted, hopefully, what are we, May, June, maybe June or July at the earliest.
Okay, so we got a time for that. We got a chat. Well, Ryan is just saying thank you, and he provided his contact number.
Don, can you forward the link to Chris?
Sure.
Thanks. And
The link.
to the bylaws. Actually, it's forwarded to everybody.
Okay.
You did, didn't you?
I know, just you.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah.
Okay. So, update to the PCWA, we already said there's no update. Don, are you prepared to talk about hiring a clerk?
I would like to hire a clerk, and I have Bonnie has actually expressed interest in doing it and being a clerk to the board, and I'd like to proceed with that. I need to develop a job description for that. Maybe I have to work with you on that.
Yeah, I have some samples.
Okay.
So we've talked about that for the last couple of months, and until the bylaws are changed, you can't do that.
Actually, the way the bylaws read right now, a clerk can be hired. It's an interpretation, and what I just said is actually the way the bylaws read right now. We have a set of bylaws and we have a code of ordinances, and under the code of ordinances, it allows for the general manager to be the secretary or to delegate that responsibility to someone else, which would be somebody that is hired. And the code of ordinances takes precedence over the bylaws because this was this follows law.
I agree that we need to do that, but
so it's in there. And so one of the things I did was when I was updating our bylaws, I made the bylaws match the ordinances because they weren't in agreement at that point.
But it says right there, the manager secretary shall record and prepare the minutes, period. So until we change this, Don has to do what Don gets paid to do.
You and I can talk about that, but that's probably something that we can do at the next meeting. However, it does say on page 2 of the general ordinance that ordinances, the general manager may delegate any of his or her authority as deemed appropriate or necessary. All decisions and movements of the general manager shall be final unless appealed to the board.
So what trumps Bylaws,
The ordinance,
bylaws are general ordinances.
ordinance is number one, bylaws is supposed to support the ordinance.
That makes no difference to me, because I know we need
We need it.
it.
We absolutely
But
need
if
it.
somebody comes back to us and says, you guys are in violation of your bylaws, then we start an argument, and I was hoping that we could put this off until we can get the bylaws.
We'll see if we can hustle the bylaws too, to have it at the same time. But there's also another piece here on this, within the bylaws, it does the same
So
thing.
we'll work on it.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, do we tell Don green light, go ahead and start?
I'm in favor of that. I see a manager's responsibility to deliver that process, whether he does it or an agent that his does it. As long as it gets done and he's responsible for it, which he would still be responsible, whether he has someone helping it. I have no problem with him moving forward I'd like to know what the compensation was, because we talked about a couple, I don't know if we worked that out yet or not.
Yeah.
Okay.
My suggestion, and I hate to put this off for another month, but my suggestion is that a job description with a compensation package be developed first and approved by the board before you hire.
Okay.
And along with that, we talked about hiring a webmaster, which is not talked about.
That's another agenda item.
And I think that's different item, but I think we can go ahead with.
Well, yeah, that's in motion actually, so we'll get to the update on that in a second here. Okay. Oh, well, it's actually the next item on the webmaster, and Don, do you want to give an update on what we have so far?
Yeah, I have, so far I have two proposals for to redo the website, and a third that's in the works. The two of the proposals are really to revamp the entire website. And the third is looking at just changing it to be ADA compliant. Very minimal. And so anyway, hopefully next month I'll have it solidified as far as what the cost is for upgrading. And I will be in contact with the others to say, hey, without revamping it, what would it cost to upgrade? Just to make it ADA. So it's comparing apples to apples. So, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a motion, and we do have some things I know Don is working on that.
So that will be tabled from there.
Right, so till we get the proposal all straight away. Review the proposal we just talked about. Charging non-rate payers for fire protection access for fire hydrants. We already said that shouldn't be on the agenda anymore. Okay. The item number 9, this has to do with the fire station in Christian Valley. I believe, Diana, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here, Rolando.
Yeah, so,
sorry.
Before you had done some leg work. I think you had originally were aligned with Chris to do some work and follow up on what options we had. You have done some leg work.
Right.
And then you were going to ask.
I'm asking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. You had a request on the table, so why don't you let the board and the community members know what your request was?
Right. Kind of gone through some iterations because a couple of months ago, I actually had called, California Department of Insurance and went through a bunch of gyrations to see what we could possibly do to mitigate some of the fire insurance burden. I wasn't led down a path that was of any real encouragement. So I started looking into other avenues, and it came to my attention that CAL FIRE and actually offers a larger protection if you engage with them through a cooperative agreement / license. And Placer County indemnifies them, but you can run under their umbrella, I guess. I'll have to get more clarification once the board gives me the go-ahead to, use their name, to do it in their name. Like, for instance, City of Auburn runs under Placer County with their own cooperative agreement. And what that boils down to is that could actually open the door for CAL FIRE to take over the jurisdiction of the CCC property and even install a fire station there, if an EMT station, if that's what they deem as appropriate, depending on what the, closest stations are and so on and so forth. But also what that agreement is doing, it's indemnifying them and saying that if they have to bring a bulldozer, or if they have to take a borate plane over a house, they're not going to be sued. So that actually, it made a lot of sense to me, because I always wondered why, when the wildfires were going, why certain counties and or cities were getting that kind of attention. And when I went back to look at it, they were under a cooperative agreement licensing contract with CAL FIRE as an indemnity to them so that they would not be sued. So I yield back to you for any comments on that, and I would like to pursue it further for the community.
Does the board have any comments?
So I'm a little confused about what you're asking for.
To have a written authorization to have this conversation with the battalion chief of CAL FIRE on behalf of Christian Valley's board, and try to bring some kind of an agreement to the board.
Yeah. So my understanding is that we can't just hand over that kind of authority to anybody. I think what I would propose is that we kind of formalize better a committee to tackle this on. I think the board needs to make a decision. We got a lot on our plate right now. I don't know if we have the bandwidth to take this on as well. I do think it's important. I think that the community would be happy if we could accomplish something on this. I don't know how likely it is, but I think, we've definitely dug enough holes to pursue it, and Diane's willing to do it. What I would like to see is a committee that's kind of led by a board member, and that Diane, participate in that. But I don't think we can give you authority over any of the board's business.
I'm fine with that. Whoever has the, the capacity and time to work with me, I will do most of the work, which I do anyway. So that's fine. However we have to play it, I think it's an avenue that would be protective for the community.
I'm going to suggest that Dawn form a committee. The reason I'm going to suggest that is because if it's a committee of the board to look into this, then it must follow all Brown Act. And if it's a committee that is organized on behalf of the board, but not a committee of the board, then you have a little more flexibility to get some work done very quickly.
The board member still has to be present.
It would be helpful to have a board member
But then
on,
the Brown Act is out of it.
but the Brown Act is out of it at that point in time, right?
And it won't be a quorum.
I mean, obviously the caveat and the agreement would be with the board that obviously I'm not going to have any signing power, that's for sure. It's just basically giving comfort to the entities, Placer County, the battalion chief, and those entities that I'm not just, trying to have them have this dialogue without authority.
No, but that would be great then if you could serve on that committee, but I think, Dawn, you should appoint the committee with a board member that's willing to serve on that too. But taking all the information that you've already obtained and letting you kind of take the lead.
Which I think was the direction we were headed with Chris before. So we're gonna assign Don to take that action and evaluate that, and then he'll be in touch with you, Diane. Okay. Anything else, Diane, on that item?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I yield.
Don, the water restrictions and wetting for our residents, that was something I think.
I'd like to speak to that. I
Sure.
did a little research. There's bills out for water restrictions, and all of them that I've seen are geared towards urban use. The 50 gallons per day per person is urban, and it's not rural. When the rural requirements come out and get approved, then I'll have to bring that to the table. But just relax people's worries. We're not on a 50 gallon a day per person. Yeah, we're not urban. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. The next item is discuss agenda items for next month. Or at what point do we have to review the, oh, it's down below, okay. Agenda items for next month. I think we have a couple, right?
We'll have a bylaw report.
Yeah, bylaw report.
We'll have a compensation, for a board member compensation report.
New board member,
A new board member, oh, yeah.
Yeah, a point.
road survey, budget meeting.
Yeah, we have a budget. We have to decide on the budget meeting date here. That's next on the agenda.
Well, the same thing was a board member compensation.
We also have the update on the rebidding, but that's standard on the agenda, I guess, for the project.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll have a committee report once the committee is.
Yeah, bylaw committee.
And the
Yeah,
other one.
and maybe Don,
Fire shop.
yeah,
Fire station.
for these committees, Don, maybe if you can have some sort of a list with the board member, if there's a board member on it and who's involved, and then sort of a matrix just so that we are tracking and getting an update from those board members as a separate document. Does that make sense? If we can present that.
We may have to put the fire station thing off for into June. We're gonna be really busy again next month.
I agree. I think we'll have to evaluate that.
Is it possible to have, I know that the newsletter was on our agenda to review and approve. Is it possible to have an addition to the newsletter? So Bonnie, this question is for you. To have an addition to the newsletter that lists the committees that we're looking for, or the fact that we're looking for committee members, and have a form link that people can fill out if they're interested in serving on a committee and what types of committees they'd be willing to serve on.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. I know that Don was targeting sending the current newsletter out with the water bill. I'm not sure exactly what date he was hoping to do that. I can add as much as you want. Right now we're at 4 pages, and we've been at 4 pages with a couple of different iterations of the current newsletter. If I were to add that, I would need to add another page or so, which is totally fine. It just means a slight increase in cost to send it all out.
You could take it out of my bio.
Okay.
Or you could shorten the cougar message, because that's every year. People should.
Well, that was important to Lynn, so I've left that in for him.
Oh yeah, I know he had 2 cougars come past his backyard.
But if that's okay with you, Lynn, I can certainly edit that down even further. But yes, certainly I can add something.
I can have something for you tomorrow morning, first thing, and a link, and I'll do a Google form that we can link it to. Okay.
Lonnie, quick note of interest. Tuesday night, 2 mountain lions in my front yard.
Oh,
wow. That's just up the street from me. Wow, that's
on camera.
That's exciting. Yeah.
No, if you're outside.
As long as they're outside. Yeah. Go ahead and send me what you need. And Don, please let me know what your absolute drop dead date is to get it back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
All right.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow morning. I'll get it to you.
Tomorrow, the
Okay.
next day.
Okay, next on the agenda item, next, we got the agenda, right? I don't know if anybody has any other items. We need to set the date for the budget meeting, which I think we need to have the budget by June. Or the June. Yeah, so
Do we do 2 budgets, the May budget read and then the June adoption, or?
well, we do a meeting where we come up with a budget and then we have to.
Okay, yeah.
So we usually call for a special meeting for the budget, typically in May sometime. I don't know if anybody has suggestions on dates. Don, have you already come up with some
That
dates?
brings up a question. Because of what's going on with the corona and all of that, do we have to have budget meeting open, or can we just do it with the 5 directors gone? Or the 4
I think it
directors
needs to be
gone?
open because
It's
it's
an
a non activity.
It's a meeting of the
It's gonna
board.
be an open
Yeah,
meeting.
it's a meeting of the board.
So that kind of limits maybe what we can meet. Unless we do it like we've been doing.
Yeah.
We can take turns.
Yeah.
Might I suggest that so long as we're in this matrix that we're in, that maybe you guys could invest in some lapel mics so that it would be much more audible for us out here.
Yeah, we're gonna get a conference phone that connects to the
Yeah,
computer.
anything to improve it. It was pretty hard to deal with tonight because it was very garbled.
We actually didn't anticipate all of us being here today. Originally, I think it was just gonna be Don and I, and somehow it morphed into more and more.
Right.
So it ended up
I know this is evolving. I get it. I know it's evolving.
Okay, so the budget date for May. Any suggestions?
Well, it should be before the meeting in May.
Before the meeting in June.
Oh, okay, we don't.
So maybe the week after the main
It needs to
meeting.
be in place before June 30th.
Okay, okay, so I guess what I was asking, I'm used to doing it again at 2 months.
We have to prove the budget in the June meeting.
Right.
So it needs to be done before then.
So it could be on either end of the board meeting in May. It could be before it, it could be after it. And
Then I'm gonna suggest it be after, and the reason I'm gonna suggest it be after is because we will have information.
Sure,
There that needs to be embedded into the budget.
That's generally.
Well, we go into operational, it's not capital, so that information won't be included in the budget.
It still kind of has a bearing.
Right.
It may, and it'll also have a bearing on whether we're, the amount that we're adding for clerk.
Right, that for sure, yep.
Okay.
So let's have it
So,
after
yeah, so it's
the next meeting. So
after May 12th, I think would be
You want to
that.
have it the Tuesday after? And
That would be May 19th.
So the budget meeting, May 19th? Okay.
You need to look at it, no?
What time?
May 19th.
So is everybody available that same week on Thursday, the 21st? In case something comes up.
We have an alternate date.
So it's nice to have an alternate day.
Yeah, let's make it the
What time is?
19th or the 21st, and we'll cinch it up on the next board meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, next on the agenda. Any miscellaneous information? Nothing. Any public comment on any of what we just discussed?
I would like to say something. This is Joanne. A couple of things, actually.
Okay.
Dawn, did I understand? Can you hear me okay?
It's cutting out.
Can you hear me okay?
No.
My connection's not that good. I keep getting these notices that my internet connection is not good. So, Dawn, I wanted to ask you about the secretary duty, taking the minutes at the meetings. Is that something that you don't want to do anymore?
It was advised by our attorney to have it done by a different person for a few different reasons. One is so that I could fully participate in the meetings, but also that it would be done by a non-biased source. It's just note-taking about from the meeting.
Okay, so when you first took over the job from Lori, you were the secretary, right?
Can you say that once more? I couldn't understand.
Okay. When you took over this job, this position from Lori, you were the secretary. You was the secretary, correct?
Years ago, yes.
So now it's kind of morphed into the general manager secretary.
Yeah, well, by law, we had to have a general manager, but the duties have definitely increased and changed from 20 years ago when Lori was the district secretary.
Okay, sorry, I just lost you. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, you started to, we can hear you again, but
Okay, I lost my connection.
yeah.
So I guess I'm just trying to figure out, oh God. it's still-
Yeah, we can hear you.
Just trying to figure out. You can hear me?
Yes. And then you cut out.
Oh my God, sorry.
Is it something you can talk to Don afterwards, or you need the board to?
No, I can. The other thing I wanted to mention something about the newsletter since it was brought up. So I can type everything in chat. How about that?
Okay, go ahead.
Do it in chat, okay? You guys can
Yeah.
continue on. Okay, I'll just
I'm watching it.
It's not working.
Are you chatting with everybody, Joanne? Or maybe you could even call on the phone.
Yeah, I was gonna see if I had her number, but I think she's gonna have the same connection issue. Do you have her number? Oh.
She could call the district.
Yeah, her email.
Diane or Joanne?
She's got it in Diane. There's it, Diane.
Joe is Joanne.
No, it's Joanne.
Okay, I think we're gonna have to give up on her.
Oh, we'll never give up on Joanne Carmona. We love
Well,
Joanne.
tonight. Okay, drainage, the roads, there's a drainage issue on Rough Court. Do you know about that, or is that something you were gonna bring up?
I'm actually not prepared to talk about that
Okay,
right now.
so next
It'd be
meeting.
best to postpone that one.
Okay, anything else on roads? You said we're doing a road survey?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, so we'll get a road survey next month. Okay,
in the interim, though, if you see a pothole, let me know.
okay,
We can put it on the list.
okay.
I guess I just wanted to say one thing about the Ralph Court drainage, is that it's still an issue. I went over there when it was raining, just mildly raining, and it was just about to, the drainage was just about to spill over into Julia's front yard. And then I went over during a hard rain, and it was just going right over the top.
All right.
And Ralph Court.
Oh, yeah, I know.
And it anyway, it's going to need some attention on the Summer Road project.
Okay. And
That's all I wanted.
is Paula aware?
Yeah, but still
We're still
trying to
working
figure
through it.
out what
Okay.
to do. That's why I was like, I'm not
Okay, we'll wait till we hear more. Okay, and still no, Joanna, I think you're gonna have to follow up with Dawn later if you can hear us. Joanna, not Joanna. Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you okay. I typed in a couple of things on chat if you want to read.
Oh, it says, okay, she says, the comment I have about the newsletter is I think the first time should be about our new board member. Also, I think 4 pages for a newsletter is too lengthy. People won't read it. Okay.
That's just my opinion.
Right. Okay.
I'm not going to read a 4-page newsletter.
Right. I think at this point, we need to just make the changes that were suggested. We'll cut down the mountain lion issue and see what we get in to get the point about the committee. I think we'll hold, we'll need to come up and we can discuss this at the next agenda, is how long the newsletter should be. I think I agree with that. I think 2 pages is tops. So,
Get enough information.
Bonnie, you had a comment?
Wait, let's see. Yes, and my only comment is that over the last couple of 3 years, I've been doing this for 5 years, is that we had a number of comments that there wasn't enough information in the newsletter and that we weren't letting people know what was going on and there wasn't enough transparency and on and on and on. So we went from 2, sometimes 3 pages to 4 pages. I think that for the most part, that all of the information that we include in the newsletter is valuable information, particularly, and granted with the timing of this newsletter, there are things that are outside of what we typically do in the spring. But in the spring and early summer, we really need to talk about fire-wise communities and defensible space. As we get into winter, we need to talk about cleaning culverts so we don't have issues there, and reminding people to clean their gutters, so on and so forth. So, we really can't have both ways.
I think that we're going to move forward with this month's newsletter the way it is with the changes that we discussed earlier. I think at the next board meeting where we bring up the issues for the newsletter, we can discuss this, what we really want on there, and if we think it's worth going to 4 pages or not. I hear you, Bonnie. I agree on both cases. I think it's long, especially for me, because I kind of know what's going on, I think. But then folks complain because there's not enough information. I think we need to be more critical of the information that we put on there, and if the information is valid and useful, maybe we can consider expanding it.
And there's other styles that we might look at for sending out communication.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Kathy.
I just said we might look at some other ways to send out new information or communication.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
This day and age, we've got to be using multimedia, so I think we can do that, particularly if we're redesigning the website a little bit.
Okay. So I hope that's okay, Joanne. Moving on to consent items. So I don't know if anybody noticed, but we're moving the approval of the minutes from the previous month to the bottom of the agenda, along with consent items. So any changes to the minutes from the last month? Normally we make a motion to approve it?
Yeah, the consent is approved all at once. So unless a board member wants to pull some item off of the consent because they want to discuss it separately, you can ask for clarifying remarks, but otherwise anything that's on the consent is approved with a motion to approve the consent. So I move that we approve the consent.
Did you get sworn in?
Yes, he came over to my house.
He wanted to take a picture for a history book.
So Kathy made a motion to approve the consent items.
We need a second. All in favor? Aye. 4 ayes. Okay. So with that, I believe we can adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I'm very happy that we didn't go to midnight this time. And I think we got a lot done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.